We will call to order the November 12th, 2018 meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District Board of Directors. Would the clerk please call the roll to establish a quorum?
Director Budge? Here. Director Hansen is marked as being absent. Director Harris?
Here.
Director Hume? Director Jennings will be late. Director Miller?
Present.
Director Morin?
Here.
Director Natoli?
Here.
Director Chenier? Director Cerna is marked as being late, and Chair Kennedy.
Here.
With that, we have a quorum at 96 votes.
Great.
This meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel. Tonight's meeting will air on November 14th at 6 p.m. and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. It is also closed captioned. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker card located at the rear of the room and provide it to me or Adam. Please speak into the microphone and state your name for the record. We would appreciate everyone turning off their cell phones. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I see a show of hands of any veterans that are in the audience?
Hey.
Gentlemen right here, would you? Partially because of your service and also because one of our directors, a former Raider, is not here. So would you please, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for your service.
With that, I want to announce the arrival of Director Jennings and correct my statement about Director Cerna, who will be marked as being absent for this meeting. Next is the consent calendar, and we are pulling from the agenda item number 2, so there is only one item under consent, and that is item number 1.
Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion from Director. we have a motion from Director Chenier and a second from Director Budge. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Motion carries at 96 votes. Next would be public addresses of the board on matters not on the agenda.
And we do have several cards. We will start with Robert Copeland.
Last Tuesday on Election Day, the wire came down between City College and Florin, and some of the people were told to get on the wrong shuttle bus. Can you fix that next time that happens so they get on the right shuttle bus and go in the right direction? Because I thought that was an inconvenience to the people that got on the wrong shuttle bus. They were told to. 2, your bus system needs to be improved seriously. I mean, some buses don't run on Sundays or they run once an hour. You've got to give people a reason to ride RT. And I don't think you're doing a very good job of it. 3, when's the route optimization supposed to be completed? I would like to know that because I'm going to oppose it if that's what I've heard so far. Because it's a terrible plan. And last point, some of your RT bus drivers need to have sensitivity training or not be so combative to the people that ride the bus. Because I was getting off 86 bus on Election Day and said one of the RT bus drivers had a bad attitude when I got off the bus. I find that unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the input, Robert, and we always try to do better, but I will say in defense of our drivers that I am a regular rider of RT on a daily basis, and I'm very, very proud of the employees that we have, and they represent us very well. Helen O'Connell.
Helen O'Connell, Board. I've been trying to find out why the super senior discounted fare is not publicly notable. I've got a little pocket flyer that has almost all the rest of the discounts on there, and ages 19 to 61, senior 62 and over, disabled, student K through 12. It has all of those on there, but it doesn't have the super senior on there, and I think if it's available, it should be publicized so that people on a fixed income, being 75 and over or even 80 and over, should be able to find the information. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Henry, I'm sure that the appropriate staff heard that and follow up. Thank you. Mike Barnbaum.
Good evening, Chair Kennedy, members of the board. It's going to be a very busy month leading to the end of the calendar year. So let me just let everyone know of some upcoming meetings of interest. Some are related to your agenda this evening, and some are just related to transportation overall of interest to the Sacramento region. Tomorrow, the Folsom City Council at 6:30 p.m. Will be taking up in item 8 the question coming back of annexation into the RT district, following a very successful open house on October 30th in the senior center next to the community center and City Hall. It was well attended, including by a couple of council members that will be voting on that matter tomorrow. I can say with pretty good confidence, based on the information gathered there, we're going to have the votes tomorrow evening. I think that a lot of concerns were relieved, if you will, based on the open house, and there was a lot of clarity and transparency divulged by all parties in attendance. On Wednesday at 11 a.m. in the BART boardroom will be the meeting of the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority. Among other things they're going to highlight is approving next year's meeting calendar of their board meetings. On Friday at 10 a.m. in the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors chambers will be the meeting of the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority. They too will be adopting a meeting calendar for 2019, but a couple of things in their meeting stood out. They're going to recognize Supervisor Don Tatson and BART board member Tom Blaylock for their years of service on SJJPA, as they will be stepping down after this meeting on Friday. And they are also looking to adopt a tentative schedule change on December 17th with measures to be looked at to make changes more permanent going forward with all their negotiating parties. So that's on Friday. And then if one of your later items gets conditionally approved, there will be a Citrus Heights City Council meeting a month from tomorrow, Thursday, December 13th, discussing the same question that will be brought to Folsom's attention tomorrow evening. So just to let you know, that's the upcoming meeting calendar. Oh, and the Paratransit Board is on Monday coming up at 6 p.m. on Florin Road.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Jeffrey Tartagia. So we have a microphone for Jeffrey. Thank you, Adam.
Jeffrey Tartagia, Board. Please pass this on to Steve Henson, because he has asked that I say something nice about the board. I am going to offer this piece. This is actually to the staff in that thank you for putting at the 8th and K Street the indication map on there for dealing with the arena, because so many times people think they can go north and all that goes is to the county and to the Sac Valley, and repeatedly that is an issue. So finally that got put on there. You did the same thing, staff finally did it at 7th Street and J for the 51, saying where do you go when arena events are that this bus stop may not be utilized? You've got a couple others that you need to work on, guys. I'm going to encourage you to find them out, staff, because when I've seen what I've seen so far, it suggests that just like certain transit centers, staff needs to learn what other things are on the routes. Some of the things that I see, it doesn't seem like there's a recognition of where hospitals and access points and other things that are changing. And since Henry, you didn't make in October I see many on the riding around on all the buses. I hope and encourage that somebody else begins to replace that function of visiting once or twice, basically, whether it's October or May, of seeing what is the flow of ridership and where the places are. The last piece is my time, I think, is coming close. Is one of the things that I perceive missing is that for the 60,000 and the 30,000, this is Sac State, and the Los Rios things, it seems like you should have spent at least a day for this plan that you are proposing, and I only see very little time that was ever considered and spent on that. And I don't think our staff even recognizes that the student union has a RT map in it, the Central Library has one in it, and at City College in Rada North there is, and I suspect that, I know Elk Grove has their map. I don't know whether Rancho Cordova has a map of RT's bus schedule in there, but it might be for that and for Citrus Heights, that having an idea of where your bus schedules provide you with a map.
All right. Thank you, Jeffrey. You could have been even kinder to the board than that. Appreciate that. Crystal McGee-Lee.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, distinguished lady, since I see one lady, and gentlemen. I bring you greetings from myself, Crystal McGee-Lee, Vice President ATU Local 256, President Niz, and the ATU local members, 256 members. I come before you this evening to make you aware the ATU is formally opening our contract in December and sitting at the table in March. RT and ATU have had some accomplishments: the transit agents, the microtransit, and Folsom Annex, which we're waiting on. Still, there have been many issues that are still troubling. The new attendance program, arbitrations, and the overall tone and tenor between Mr. Booth, Labor Relations, and his staff in ATU Local 256 leadership and the membership. President Niz and I will assure you that we will bargain in good faith. But with the troubling rumblings occurring with ASME, it's hard for us to ignore, and it would be short-sighted of us not to prepare our members and rally our political allies, the incoming Governor Newsom and the Mayor, Mr. Steinberg. In closing, President Niz and I and the ATU members appreciate you listening to me, and we look forward to our negotiations. But we also want to let you know that we want you to have a blessed and safe holiday. Thank you for listening and taking the time. And that young man over there for the bus 86, I extremely apologize if you had a bad experience. Did you get to vote? Did you get to vote? Yeah. Okay, then you got there. You did the most important thing, but thank you. And I'm sorry that you had a bad experience, and we'll make sure we work on that even further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick Hodgkins. Rick Hodgkins?
Yeah, we'll give it to you. There you go.
If I can just piggyback off of what the
previous two speakers had to say. First off, Robert Copeland, although this is also to the board and also to Mr. Lonergan back there, I had two situations this month. I haven't had a driver this month have a bad attitude, but one time I almost got left behind, and the second time I did get left behind. First off, I'll just say this. Sometimes when I ride the 82, there was a short time when I would ride bus 1 to ARC and get off and ride the 82 to another destination. And just as I'm working my way across the street, or even before I have a chance to cross the street, the 82 going to where I need to go leaves, pulls away. Which means I have to wait yet another half hour for another 82. And when some of the Connect card things don't work on the buses, I try and swipe my card until I hear the correct tone, and some drivers on the 82 have a bad attitude problem, wanting me to sit down, and I kind of I'm one of those people that likes to give them their own medicine, kind of like what I used to do to staff at the California School for the Blind when I was a student there, only to get a bang on the head from the CHP. Second, that happened, I had an incident with the 82 where I was at Butano and Watt, or was it Butano and Cottage? I think it was Wednesday, October 17th or Wednesday, October 24th. It was at the 2 or 2:30 p.m. Hour, and I was waiting for the 82, and I was sitting at a bench underneath the bus shelter, and the 82 almost pulled away, and I had to yell out, "Hey, stop, stop." And luckily I was able to get on the bus. And I had the driver should have stopped when he saw me sitting on the bench. And hopefully I could talk to Mark about this. And then on Friday, October 26th, this was the very last bus 21. I was I needed to go from Sunrise and Macy Plaza across the street from Target back to Sunrise and Antelope. And the last bus that went towards Sunrise and Antelope just passed me up. I mean, what a knucklehead. So I had to get on a bus that came a half hour earlier, and I had to let the driver know that I was here for an hour, and the last bus that I wanted to get to go to Sunrise and Antelope passed me up. And he had to call dispatch and ask, quote, is it okay if I take this person that's blind to Sunrise and Antelope because the last bus passed him up? And the dispatcher, I think, blamed me for the problem, saying, well, you can do it this one time, but I can't be passed up. And to the lady from ATU, yeah, please work with the drivers on their bad attitude, because that's just not acceptable. This is not the California School for the Blind, for God's sakes. This is a city and county of Sacramento. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rick. Greg Geach.
I'm not particularly long-winded, but I don't think I can say all I need to say in 3 minutes. Is this negotiable?
Why don't you start and we'll see how it goes.
Okay. I am a transportation supervisor at Light Rail for, well, I've been with the company for pushing 30 years. It's not quite 30 yet, but thank you. I want to talk about the negotiations that are going on right now between the district and the AFSCME union. I'm represented by the AFSCME umbrella, and I'm only speaking about my job. There are a lot of different job classes covered by this, but I can only speak with any authority on the job that I do. But I think that people need to understand what we do, because the offer that we're getting, the people couldn't possibly understand what it is that we do out here. They're looking to cut our salary range by 35%. Have you guys heard any of this stuff that they're offering? This is ridiculous. The supervisor pay, the job that I have, these wages were set many years ago by people that knew what was going on. They knew what the job consisted of, because they'd done it themselves. They knew what was going on out here. They knew what the proper remuneration for this job was. What's happening now is what we have is bean counters who know absolutely nothing about what operations are about what we do out there, deciding what we should get paid. And that's unacceptable. I'm sorry. My job is designated as a critical job. Now, what that means is if Mr. Lee calls in sick one day, his office sits empty that day. But if I call in sick one day, somebody has to come in on overtime and do my job because it's critical to the operation of the system. But that gets no respect here, apparently. The job that I have is essentially a three-headed monster. What we have is radio controllers, dispatchers, and road supervisors. Now, a radio controller controls train movement on the line. And I would compare it to an air traffic controller, except an airplane has a steering wheel that you can turn where a train doesn't. So when we get into a jam, it takes a lot of know-how and a lot of resourcefulness to make the system keep running. We have to work with bus to create a bus bridge, that sort of thing, to keep things going. It's not an easy job. When things are easy, nothing's going on, it's not bad. But when it gets tough, it gets real tough. The dispatcher job, on the other hand, is what keeps the operators, it assigns the extra board for each following day, and it makes sure that the operators show up and do their work. If someone doesn't show up, you can't just leave that train empty and park it. You have to have somebody out there. So we have to have an extra board. We have to keep that going. It's a juggling act. Most companies that use dispatchers, that's all they do. If you have a taxi company, you have a dispatcher, that's all they do. Or a trucking company, they have a dispatcher, that's all they do. But our job is different. We have, like I said, a three-headed monster. And the pressure in the dispatch job is tough. It can turn your hair gray, believe me, or make it fall out, or both.
Oops.
The road supervisor job, that's a whole different story also. It requires a lot of interaction with the public. You're dealing with public issues, problem passengers who have problems. You got to be able to make a broken train move. A lot of times a train will quit out there for who knows what reason, and the person that's first to respond needs to be able to make that train go. I'm one of the guys that can do that. I spent 10 years in the shop before I became a transportation supervisor, and when we get out there and respond to that train, we need to make the wheels turn because things jam up in a hurry. That's part of the job. We have to clear track blockages. If you've got an accident or somebody parked on the tracks, you got to get them out of there. It's tough, but there are tricks. There are ways to make it happen. We have to do accident investigations. Some accidents, we unfortunately have quite a few accidents. Most of them are small fender bender type accidents, but some of them are more problematic. Some of them, in fact, are fatalities. I myself have responded to a handful of fatalities over the years, and it's not a very nice thing to have to do. One that sticks out in my mind was a guy that was at Marconi Station one morning on a Saturday a few years back. He went to get on the rear car of the train, and the operator already cleared the doors to leave, so he backed up and sat on the coupler and thought he would ride the coupler to the next station. Well, he made it about 10 feet. When he went down under the train, he was wearing a coach's jacket, a denim coach's jacket with the raglan sleeves and that, and you could see a blue stripe of cloth mark on the tracks embedded in asphalt in the station. Then it goes to open rail at the end of the station. You could see that stripe till it got there, and at that point, the train cut him neatly in half in two separate and equal pieces. Now, he had a kind of an odd look on his face, a surprise, like I didn't expect this. But the thing is, what I've noticed in my lifetime is some of the good things that we do and some of the best things that happen in our lives, they kind of fade with time. You have trouble recalling all the details in that, but I can tell you that you have no trouble recalling those details. Those stand out in your mind, even when you don't want them standing out. They're there.
Got it.
But that's part of the job.
If you could wrap up, I did give you extra time, by the way.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'll try to hurry, but I do have a little further to get going.
Okay.
What's being messed with here are career employees. I've been here bumping against 30 years. There are people in this room who do the same job I do with more than 30 years in the company. And we're being pushed out right now by the offers for retirement. The retirement is the reason I'm here. My plan was to retire at the end of January. I don't know if you're aware, but the feds have a 3-year program where if you haven't put a full amount each year into your 457, your deferred compensation, you can have a 3 years where they double the non-taxable amount you can put in. I've been on this plan for 5 years now. I'm in my 3rd year of that. A couple months to go, retirement. Looking forward to it. However, with what's being offered, myself and a whole bunch of other people are having to slink out of here like thieves in the night. And this is not a good way to treat people that have been here 30 years. Now, I'll tell you, I have to take a little longer.
Just a little longer.
All right.
Okay?
My daughter
Thanks.
is 28 years old. She just turned 20. In fact, today's her birthday. She went to Sac State for a couple of years. She went to Long Beach State for a couple of years, and she was recruited by Toyota at Long Beach State. When she graduated, she immediately went to work for them. She's been with them for about 6.5 years. She was there about 1.5 years. She has a defined benefit retirement program. You understand what that is, as opposed to a 401k. Well, she's been there about 1.5 years, and Toyota decided to change to a 401k program. So what did they do? They drew a line on that date, and they said anyone employed by Toyota before this date will maintain and retain their defined benefit program. Anyone who hires on after that date will go to the 401k. Now, why did they do this? They told them, because we're going to honor the promises we made to you. We appreciate, we respect our employees, and we're going to treat you as you need to be treated. But apparently RT doesn't see things that way, because those of us who are career employees are being pushed out by the new retirement that they're trying to impose on us. You guys need to understand how major this whole thing is. This is no way to treat long-term employees, not at all.
Okay. You're now at 8 minutes.
I know. I'll wrap it up, and I appreciate you taking the time and listening. And I hope you'll do the right thing, because what this is becoming now is a time issue. If we don't tell the retirement people that we're leaving by the end of this week, it's going to screw things up. We're not going to be able to make it happen. And there's probably 20 people that are going. I know 5 from my office. And when 5 people walk out of the light rail office, as shorthanded as we are now, it's going to grind to a halt in December. We can't really have that. So anyhow, thank you. I hope you guys will do something about this, because it's a necessary thing.
Thank you.
We deserve better treatment.
And thank you, and I thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you. Thank you. And that's the first time anybody's gotten 9 minutes, by the way.
Thanks. Not much of a public speaker.
Sarah, pretty good. You do pretty well, yeah. Sarah Kerber, please.
Hello, my name is Sarah Kerber with the Sacramento Transit Riders Union. SacTrue would like to thank and support the drivers and staff who make our system run. SacTrue supports using resources to retain and train good workers. We hope with the failure of Prop 6 that more resources are available to support our dedicated drivers and staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, Sarah. That's all of the cards that I have. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak? Next item, please.
Next item, new business, item number 3, resolution conditionally approving the annexation of the City of Citrus Heights transit services into the Sacramento Regional Transit District and the associated annexation agreement, presented by Laura Ham.
Ms. Ham.
Good evening, Chair Kennedy and directors. I'm here tonight to present a potential annexation of the City of Citrus Heights into the Sacramento Regional Transit District. Since the City of Citrus Heights was incorporated in 1997, SacRT has operated regional fixed-route bus and local circulator routes under contract with the city. Our most recent agreement was established in 2015 and then amended in 2017. In 2018, we demonstrated our strong partnership and cooperation in implementing the Smart Ride. Our annexation discussions at the staff level have been extremely positive, and as noted on this slide and in the staff report, there are a number of benefits to moving from a contractual arrangement to annexation. One of the primary benefits is that it will allow SacRT and the city to compete more effectively for federal, state, and local funding for transit-related improvements. And the terms of the agreement also provide that the city's transit service priorities will be addressed. I'll highlight the significant terms of the agreement for you in the next couple of slides. We have committed to the same level of overall transit investment in the city at the 2017 contract amendment levels. As I mentioned previously, in 2018, we implemented the Smart Ride, and RT and Citrus Heights agree that the expanded Smart Ride or similar service will be contingent on future funding. We mutually acknowledge the need for improved connections, and also that there may be funding and jurisdictional challenges to immediately addressing this issue. We are committed to exploring high-capacity bus corridors in our upcoming study on this topic. We have received grant funding, and this is tentatively scheduled to kick off in early 2019. We will review and monitor travel times on an annual basis and collaborate on strategies to reduce travel times related to congestion, such as route design and transit-supportive infrastructure improvements. Future planning includes incorporating the priorities established in the 2018 Citrus Heights Transit Plan, including the needs for improved connections, as I just mentioned, as well as local circulator service. We will establish annually a method to measure and track service and collaborate on future planning efforts. We will continue to provide ADA complementary paratransit service, including the expanded service that provides connections to several medical facilities in Roseville. SAC-RT will dedicate staff to bus stop and shelter maintenance, We will aggressively seek funding opportunities to provide investments in transit infrastructure, marketing and education, new mobility options, and service enhancements. SAC-RT will claim TDA revenues directly, with the exception of bike and pedestrian funds. We have agreed to provide a transit fund roughly equal to the amount of the TDA administrative fee, so that Citrus Heights can continue to fund transit-related planning, capital, or other transit-related efforts. This funding is flexible and can be directed to SAC-RT for bus service as well in the future, if that's so decided. So lastly, Citrus Heights Council will take action on annexation at their December 13th meeting. Therefore, staff is requesting that the board conditionally approve the annexation of the city of Citrus Heights contingent on the city approving the same. Thank you.
5 slides, that's pretty awesome, thank you. Is there any comments or questions? Mr. Miller?
I think I should. I did disagree. I thought Citrus Heights was annexing RT, not the other way around.
Oh, okay.
But I did want to thank both regional transit staff and Citrus Heights staff for hammering out this deal. I think it's about time.
Great.
That we become part of the family, and I believe this is good for all, especially the region, and what we'll be able to do as a whole.
All right.
And that is a motion.
Okay. Director Moore.
Second.
Yeah, and just to, Folsom's efforts in the same regard, and we took this up right after we made the similar action for Folsom last meeting. A couple of our council members had some concerns based on concerns of our riders, so I'm confident we had the votes that night, but I think it was more important to alleviate those concerns and approach this making sure everybody had all the information, including our council members. And I just wanted to thank regional transit staff as well as our city staff for conducting a second open house to answer some of those questions and concerns. So we will be taking this up at our council meeting tomorrow evening, and I'm very confident that that it'll get the support there. So just wanted to update folks on that.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, we have a motion by Director Miller and a second by Director Budge, but I do have some cards. Russell Rollins, which I didn't see, Russell. Oh, you're not in your usual place, Russell.
It's dark over there.
Yeah.
Good evening, board. I too am supportive of the idea of annexing Citrus Heights into RT's jurisdiction. It has, or well, the other way around, right? So, okay, right, merging. just take over, right? So, as someone who grew up in a suburban region, I know how difficult it can be to get the appropriate level of transportation access. And I see this as a highly positive change. I do hope that RT will continue to commit to look to expand service in the region out that direction, because I know that there are a large number of people out there that would love to be better integrated in the system. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mike Birnbaum.
Yes, thank you. I will second the motion by Mr. Rawlings and support the annexation of Citrus Heights into the Regional Transit District. Similar to Folsom, it goes without saying that it makes the competition stronger when going after grant and other funding to be a whole district instead of separate parts. That's a real key benefit to both this happening in Folsom and Citrus Heights. My question, though, for Laura would be, how does this annexation, how is it similar and or different than that of Folsom? And my question for Brent would be, how would the vote allocation be come Monday, January 14th, assuming that that would be the first board meeting of 2019, be with Folsom as a full member, Citrus Heights as a full member, but only Elk Grove not quite yet being a full member? At the last meeting of this board, when they were taking up the conditional approval for Folsom, a slide was shown with just Folsom annexed and everyone annexed. And there wasn't a Folsom plus one, but not the other. So yes, if I were on the dais, that would be a question I have of Brent and staff. How would that look like come January 14th, 2019? But other than those outstanding questions for both Laura and Brent, I support the motion of this and would forward it to the Citrus Heights City Council on Thursday, December 13th.
Great,
Thank you.
And Laura, you want to respond to any of that? I believe that what they're going to do is they're going to give all of the votes to the County of Sacramento.
I will quickly answer the question, although I suspect Mike knows the answer to it. But the main difference is that RT has been operating service under contract to the city of Citrus Heights for a number of years. So we are already operating that bus service. Whereas with Folsom, we had a number of operators operating their bus service now that would be transitioning over to RT. So those are the significant differences.
Good evening, Chair Kennedy.
Well done.
Stop right there. Well, success today. All right. So just to give you a quick update on the voting share today, the city of Sacramento has 36 votes. If Folsom and Citrus Heights join, there would be 32 votes for the city of Sacramento. For the county of Sacramento, today is 42. Under this combined annexation, it would be 37 for the county. Rancho Cordova has 10. It would end up with 9. Citrus Heights currently has 5. You would get 10. City of Folsom has 3. You would have 9. Elk Grove has 4. They would drop down to 3. And I think that was it.
So,
Ms. Budge.
so then I need to ask, if we're all trying to be equal partners, why does Citrus Heights get 10 votes and we drop down to 9?
It's a two-pronged system where it looks at the revenues that come in, and it also gives a 5 points towards coming in the board. So there's a formula that we follow, and it's actually determined, I think it's by the PUC, and I'm going to double check if David is here really quick. There you are. David, you want to
Sounds like we're being penalized because we don't have any bus routes.
Dave Goldman, OMB Director. The way the formula works, it's a little interesting how it works. There's some rounding that occurs. So once you join, you automatically get 5 votes. But then what's taken into account is the amount of financial contribution and population and a few other factors that go into the calculation. And if the first round of voting is below like a threshold of 0.6, then the votes are rounded down. If it's above the threshold of 0.6, the votes are rounded up. Then another round comes about.
What voting?
Well, it's it's a really complicated formula. Basically, I'm trying. Let's see how I can explain this so it's easy for me to understand. So there's a formula that's based on the amount of TDA funds that are allocated for each one of the different cities that are part of the district. And on top of that, we also look at the amount of money that comes into RT based on the amount of contract funds that come in. And also there's a formula that deals with population. So based on that, the votes are provided based on that. And then we look at 5 votes per member. So you have, right now, you have the county, the city of the county and the city of Sacramento, and then you have, what's the other one? City of Rancho Cordova. That's 15 votes. So that formula I mentioned before, you take 15 votes off and bring it in. Those are the 5 votes that occur. Then you have 85 votes left that are divvied out based on that formula. Now, when that formula is calculated, sometimes based on rounding, it's not 85 votes, it comes to 86 votes. So what they do is they look at each individual city and see, they go to 2 decimal points and they see which one is above 0.6 and which one is below 0.6. And if it comes to, like, let's say 86 votes.
Okay, actually, that's all right.
I wish I could tell you this in an easier way.
Okay, so our Public Works Director is here tonight. So if you would explain that to Albert, so
Sure.
he can explain that to us, that would be a really great thing.
Thank you, Director Budge.
If I could, while we're on that, though, again, it's complicated. That was clear by the explanation. But I guess I'm curious, though. So recognizing the City of Sacramento and County of Sacramento obviously had large chunks, but for the other member cities, if they're once in, and I think the difference was Rancho, when they incorporated, they were made a part of this district.
Right. And we're the only ones.
Yeah, and Elk Grove and Citrus Heights were not. Obviously, Folsom had long standing and came up has come on board. So is there no recognition of that? Because of the 3 entities, Rancho was, by virtue of the agreement under the LAFCO termination for incorporation, they were part of the district. And obviously this district was very clear in communicating that during the hearings leading up to that, because Elk Grove and Citrus Heights were not required. So I recognize there's an adjustment and there may be some rounding, but for Rancho then to actually lose a vote in this sequence, will they be able to make that up? Or are they going to be, every time somebody gets added in, i.e. Elk Grove, is Rancho going to get adjusted downward in order to get the 5 bonus to Elk Grove as a part of it?
Yeah, and this has absolutely nothing to do with my dear friend sitting on the other end of the
No, I'm just
But Don is absolutely right. Of the 3, we're the only one that was mandated to join by the 4 different LAFCO resolutions, and we've never gotten our TDA money. It's always come to regional transit. So, we've been plodding along like this for 15 years now, and it just doesn't seem logical to lose a vote. I mean, unless this organization were structured kind of like the library authority, where it depends on your population and you go over 100,000 or whatever, and then you get another vote. That's logical. But what's your population, Steve?
About 84,000.
84? Yeah, and we're at 75, give or take. So
That's worth an extra vote right there.
I don't think 10,000 votes qualify.
And it is the TDA contribution as well, and you haven't seen that.
So if I appreciate there's a formula, it just seems illogical.
Staff appreciate the feedback from the public and from the board. We will take a look at that, further analyze that, and get back to the board.
Thank you.
That's fine.
You're welcome.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, I know. I was just, all right, next we have Rick Hodgkins. Please get Rick a mic.
Good job. Okay. Chair Kennedy, members of the board. Rick Hodgkins, disability rights advocate, disability rights activist, and disability rights extremist. I rise in strong support of this annexation with one goal in mind, that we start expanding the 21 in both directions before 6:30 a.m. on Monday through Friday morning, and after 9:30 p.m. Monday through Friday evening, before 11 in the morning on Saturday and Sunday, and after 6:30 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. The 21 deserves both high coverage and high frequency. And as I was telling Henry over here, that any bus that goes to light rail, I understand that not all of our routes feed into light rail stations, but that those routes that do feed into light rail stations, such as the 21, should be allowed to get both high coverage and high frequency. That way everyone makes their light rail train, because I've had two drivers tell me, maybe more, that they don't take into account stoplights and traffic when it comes to planning these routes. This is something that should have been done over 20 years ago when Citrus Heights became a city. They should have been automatically annexed into the district. That would have been the smart thing to do. And now that we're a city 21 years later, in annexing, I would highly recommend that the 21 be given not only high coverage but high frequency, only because it is a bus that feeds into a light rail stop, and I'll talk more about that when we get into SAC RT forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anything else from the board? Questions, comments? We still have a motion by Director Miller and a second by Director Budge. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Thank you.
Motion carries at 96 votes. Next item, item number 4, information, SAC-RT Forward Alternatives Report and Public Involvement, presented by Laura Ham.
Hello again. Tonight, Michelle Poirot from Jarrett Walker and Associates will share with you the alternatives that we have been sharing with the public over the past month. As you can imagine, we've gotten some pretty strong reaction to these alternatives, and that's a good thing. We are now moving into the phase of the project where we will draft actual networks. The draft networks will include input from public outreach and peers. Public outreach is not complete yet, but comments will be collected and considered as part of the network design, as well as your input tonight. We plan to bring draft networks back to the board at the December 10th meeting, followed by another round of public outreach to seek input on the draft networks, and we hope to have board adoption of a network early next calendar year. So with that, here's Michelle.
Thank you, Laura. Good evening, Chair Kennedy and members of the board. Thank you so much for spending some time on your agenda to talk about this process. So I'm going to try not to cover information I've covered before. I think this is my third time speaking with you, once in the spring and once at your retreat. So I will do some hearkening back to conversations that we've already had. Here is some hearkening back. The big question we're tackling in this phase of this project is, how should SAC-RT balance competing goals for your existing transit budget? So the gentleman who spoke first tonight said, why don't you have more frequency on Sundays? Why don't you have buses that come more than once an hour? He said, give the people a reason to ride. And he's describing something that is very true. When you increase levels of service on existing high ridership routes, higher ridership is the typical result. So agencies that want to increase ridership will typically add Sunday service on high ridership routes, or make routes more frequent, make them run later at night. And yet, we also know that people regularly ask you to put service in new places, to run more service in areas that currently have no service. And that is also a very laudable goal for transit and also a valuable thing that you can be doing with your budget. Because of the math of how transit works, when you do one of these things, you move away from doing the other. So the more that you are asked to put new service in new neighborhoods, the less you have budget available to add Sunday service to an existing route or make a route come more frequently or later at night, and vice versa. So we describe these two outcomes as trading off against each other. And they are on a spectrum. When you do more of one, you move away from the other. So if you want to attract higher ridership, there are certain things that you can do. Add more Sunday service, add more frequency, etc. But you will be moving away from a choice to add new coverage in new places that have no service, and vice versa. This is not a binary choice. You already run a network that has some services that attract high ridership. You run some frequent routes, you run them late at night, you run them all weekend, people build their lives around them. You also run some services that don't get very much ridership relative to their costs, and that's not the point. They don't exist to get high ridership. They exist to cover important places and to help vulnerable people have at least some lifeline access. So you already run a system that balances these goals. You have some coverage and you have some ridership and frequent service in your system. So it's not a binary choice, but it is a trade-off. And it's a trade-off that we wanted to consult the public about before we designed a draft network. We didn't want to just have our own idea about what's right for this community. We wanted to ask the public, this is a difficult trade-off. This is a question of values. What do the values of the people of Sacramento and Sacramento area say about this trade-off? So I'm going to tell you some of the public input that we've received in the last phase, in the spring and early summer. As you heard from Laura, public consultation is happening right now on these alternatives. And so at your next meeting, you'll hear about the public input that we got during this phase. So we asked people, would you rather walk farther but have a short wait for your bus, or walk a short distance but have a longer wait for your bus? And this is a trade-off that comes up when you design any transit network between fewer, more frequent routes or more routes, but with lower frequencies. And this is what we heard out of the online engagement, so the web survey. You see a lot of people said, well, I mostly prefer shorter waits, or I definitely prefer shorter waits, or I'll do whatever I can to get there soon. There was more tolerance expressed for walking in order to get a short wait than for waiting in order to get a short walk. And of course, you know, individuals are in different situations and will have a different ability to walk and a different ability to wait, depending on their situation. So this is just the aggregate. About 630 people answered this question this way. We also asked in person at public events the same kind of question: walk further and have a short wait, or vice versa. And again, a bit more interest in walking farther but to get a shorter wait. In other words, walking a little farther to get to a frequent route. This was about 420 people who responded in public events in this way.
Director Chenier.
We do not know if they're unduplicated. We don't know how many people at the public events who put stickers on the board also took the survey. It's certainly possible that some of them did. Yeah. We asked a much smaller group of people a related question, but a policy question. This is the group of stakeholders who were asked to participate in a training and a workshop in the spring. We asked them, how would you want SAC-RT to balance ridership and coverage goals within the existing budget? So just the way I've explained it to you, this agency has a budget. This is a policy choice. How should the agency be balancing these competing goals for its budget? And that group back in the spring said, well, you know, on average, they said shift a little bit towards higher frequencies and higher ridership. That was back in the spring, and they have 2 more chances to weigh in. But that was their initial input. And just to clarify, all of this input came before the alternatives were designed and out. So this is just when asking people in the abstract what they want. So another question we asked people is, what should we do with any new funding? So if SAC-RT were to get new funding somehow, what's the top priority for that in the fixed route bus system? And from the stakeholder group, So this was, again, that group that went through the training. The top choice was higher frequency, but a close second was wider geographic coverage, and then later night service, and then some other desirable things. We asked the people who took the online engagement, more than 600 people answered this question. If you discovered new funding, where would you spend it first? Again, first, most popular was higher frequency. The second was covering places that don't have service. Next was weekday night service, and so on. And it's very normal for people, for the same person to say, my top priorities are higher frequency and more coverage. I think we can all understand why both of those things are so desirable. We asked people in the public meetings, if you, and in the public pop-up events, if more funding became available, how would you like it spent? Again, higher frequency. And then interestingly, more service on Sundays and more service on Saturdays were very popular at those public events. Not exactly sure why, but hundreds of people gave input this way. So that is a summary of the input from the last phase. Then we produced these two alternatives. And the purpose of these alternatives is not that one or the other should be implemented. We are not recommending one or the other. It is to create a space for discussion and debate. That space is in between the alternatives. So we are presenting them always as on a spectrum. That here's one end of the spectrum and here's the other end of the spectrum. Where, public, community, do you think SAC-RT should be in this spectrum between them? Some people look at one or look at the other and say, I love that one, do that, and that's fine. But we're also inviting people to say, you should be right in the middle, or you should be in the middle but a little more towards high frequency or a little more towards coverage. So that's the frame for the question. A couple of assumptions we made from these alternatives. One is we assume that there's no new budget. So we're asking the question the hard way, which is, if there's no new funding, then what is the more important goal? This certainly all becomes easier if there's new money, because then you can add frequency without cutting coverage, or add coverage without cutting frequency. We assumed that the bus speeds stay the same, the bus stops stay roughly the same, except of course if routes move, you move your bus stops. Specialized services such as some of the commuter expresses you do, the school-related trips, also your contracted services with Rancho Cordova and Natomas don't need to change. We assumed free or extremely cheap transfers, and thus we're so relieved when you made the wonderful decision to bring those back. That is really very helpful for the success of either network, for people to be able to pay once for a trip and not be charged for each boarding. That really frees up your network to do its work. And then finally, we assumed a blank slate. So we didn't start with history. We didn't start with the assumption that things should keep being done the way they've always been done. But there are some routes that you see in both alternatives that exist today, and that's because they make a lot of sense. They're good routes. They take people where they need to go. There's no reason to redesign them, but we didn't keep them around just because anyone's sentimental about them or because they've always been there. So it's a blank slate. I should say one more thing that I forgot to put on this list. Is not so much a key assumption as a design decision. Both of these alternatives include something that it is not a given RT should implement right away, and that is longer routes. Both of these alternatives include longer routes than RT currently operates. RT's existing network, I may have told you this story before, I can't remember. And some of you know this story, I'm sure, because you were part of it. They were designed as feeders to light rail stations to take people downtown. The region has changed, employment has changed, the economy has changed, and now it doesn't make sense to have all your routes just feeding light rail stations to take people downtown. People actually want to go cross town and around town for all kinds of purposes. But the feeder structure worked very nicely when there wasn't very much congestion. All the routes could be timed to get to the train station at the same time, and so people could transfer between buses very easily without a wait, and then the buses all drove off. Well, that stopped working when congestion got worse, and now the bus timing can't work like that. And so you have these shorter bus routes that don't take people across town, they take them to the next transit center or the next light rail station, and then they have a fairly long wait to transfer, often, to another bus route. RT staff has done a wonderful job trying to time as many of these transfers as they can, but it is mathematically impossible to time them all. So one thing that RT can do in the future is run longer routes, so that a route comes to a light rail station or a transit center, drops people off, and keeps going across town. But this is not easy, and it does require some staff resources and support. This is something that agencies do find difficult to do. So I want to point that out as common to both alternatives, but something worth thinking about and discussing, not a given that that's actually advisable at this time. But it certainly bears great fruits for your riders if you can run longer routes. Okay, so I hope each of you has a packet that includes 3 maps, one of the existing network, the 2 alternatives, and then 3 frequency tables. This is the high coverage alternative. It is the most like the existing network, but it is not exactly like the existing network. So some of the routes follow different routes. Some of the connections are made in different places. This is just the map showing weekdays. We've also published a map of weekends. In the high coverage alternative, you see a mix of blue and light blue lines on there. Most routes come every 30 or 60 minutes, and many of them, their frequency drops off on weekends. But it's very similar to existing. This is the high ridership alternative. Very different from existing. Many, many more red lines. And the lines that aren't red are blue. So all your routes either come every 15 minutes or every 30 minutes. Something that's very different about the high ridership alternative is that every route, with I think just 2 exceptions, comes every 30 minutes all week long, all 7 days of the week. So for example, we've been talking about Rancho Cordova. There are not very many lines in Rancho Cordova in this alternative. In the other alternative, there are still just as many lines. But in this one, there are not. And yet, there's actually not a lot less service in Rancho Cordova because those lines are there all week at the same frequency. So that's an important illustration of how the amount of service isn't exactly the same as the number of lines on the map. You also have to ask, is this bus here all week? And at what frequency? And how late at night? And what about Sunday evenings? And so on. The high ridership alternative would provide access from between many crucial destinations, not with a single route, a 1-seat ride, but with 2 routes that make a connection at high frequency. So instead of a single route that will take you directly there but comes every 60 minutes, there are 2 routes you have to transfer, but each of them comes every 15 minutes. And for the majority of trips, that actually makes the trip faster, because someone spends so much less time waiting that even though they transfer, they still get to their destination sooner, or they have to leave home less early to get to their destination. So transfers are an important part of this. And SACTRU has raised some really good points in a letter to you that if transferring becomes a more important part of your system, then certainly the waiting environment where people are transferring and the pedestrian environment also becomes something for RT to be thoughtful about. I want to show you 2 images and explain what they mean. There are more available on the website and in the report. They're called isochrones. They show how far a person could get in a given amount of time from a certain place, just one place. So we can pick a place of interest. We picked about 20. This is one of them, 71st and 21st. It's a dot right in the middle there. And then ask the question, on the transit network and with walking and counting all the time spent waiting, how far can somebody get on this alternative compared to the existing network? So on the left, here's the isochrone for the coverage alternative. This person can basically get as far in an hour as they could get in the existing network. It's not very different. On the right, in the high ridership alternative, high frequency alternative, you see that there's some blue here. They can go north on Power In. They can go west on Florin, and they can ride light rail. And they get a little bit farther, which is why there's that blue area around. Because they spend less time waiting to make transfers, they have more time to go farther. And so they can go a little farther, they can reach more jobs, they can reach more people. That's what the isochrones show. I don't want to spend too much time on it now, but we have 20 of these or 19 of these. We tried to pick places that were representative. We took some requests from the community, and they just illustrate how even on a network with fewer lines, sometimes you can still get farther faster. This one is for Willarga and Elkhorn, which I also know is a neighborhood of concern. Both alternatives would actually improve access for the people near this intersection. As you can see, there's some blue here where the coverage alternative improves access to the north, and there's blue here where the high frequency alternative improves access to the east and the south. Shall I be taking questions from the audience?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. So the isochrones show if we assume people's time is limited, then we do things like make isochrones, right? We say someone only has an hour that they're willing to spend in the morning and the evening for their commute. How far can they get? If we assume that people's time is limited, then we can measure how many jobs people can get to with a given amount of travel time across these alternatives. And here's the results of that measure. This is called access. High coverage alternative, access to jobs. This is how many residents could reach more or fewer jobs within an hour in the high coverage alternative. And what you see in this bar graph is this is like if you lined up every resident in your service area from front to back, and you had the people whose job access got much, much better stand in the front, and you put them all in green t-shirts. And then the people whose job access just got a little bit better stand behind them, you put them in light green t-shirts, and so on. And the people whose job access got worse, you had them stand in the back in pink t-shirts. And this is what that line of people would look like. There'd be a small number of people whose job access got fantastically better, and there'd be a small number of people whose job access got considerably worse. But basically, the median change, the experience of the average person, is no change in job access. Today, they can access 2,000 jobs within an hour, and in the coverage alternative, they could access 2,000 jobs within an hour. It might be a little different, they might be different jobs, but their access doesn't net change. And the same is true of low-income residents. We looked specifically at low-income residents. No net change in how many jobs they can access in a given amount of time. Access does change in the high-frequency, high ridership alternative. And again, it changes because people spend less time waiting and because the frequent services are put where the most people and jobs are located. And again, we have our line of people from the people wearing dark green t-shirts who can access tremendously more jobs to the people wearing pink t-shirts who can access many fewer jobs. And there are more people wearing green t-shirts. There are more people in your service area whose job access greatly increases. Today they can access 2,000 jobs within an hour, and in this alternative they could access 6,000 jobs within an hour, something like that. There are more of those people, which means that the median experience for a resident of your service area is a 9% increase in how many jobs they can access. And again, we asked specifically, what about low-income residents? And the median experience is a 14% increase in job access. So thank you for persevering through those charts. This is the kind of information I really only show to boards because I know that you're thinking big picture and you're thinking about the whole service area and you're thinking about policy and the economy, and job access aggregated over your whole service area is what makes RT's service relevant to the economy. It is not the only basis for this decision at all. As we've already discussed, there are important reasons to run service, even if you're not getting high ridership on that service. But when people talk about the economy, this is what they mean. So to wrap up, not I personally, but the whole team, your staff especially, are doing 40 in-person outreach events this month, where they're going out to where people are in the community to ask them for input on these alternatives and on the spectrum between the alternatives. There is also an online virtual workshop, which is open through November 16th, so please encourage people in your community to take that. RT staff has also gathered input from operators about this. We're doing a public open house tomorrow evening for people who want to come in person. And it's great to have discussions with staff at the open house and ask questions and give input that way. And then, again, this is all going to be wrapped up with the results summarized for you at your December meeting. So, thank you.
Great. Are there questions from the board before we go to the public?
One question, Chair.
Yes, Director Miller.
I was curious,
Budge.
Do you have a sense of where we're at right now, percentage-wise, between ridership and coverage?
Somewhere around 50 or 60% of your budget is spent in services that are getting high ridership, and the balance is spent on services that they're not getting as high ridership
40?
as they could. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Sure. And there's nothing wrong with that balance. We do fantastic transit plans for agencies all the time with exactly that balance. So you just tell us what balance you want.
Director Budge.
Do you want comments or just questions?
Either. Whatever you like.
Well,
You have the floor.
gee, thank you. So part of the reason that Albert came tonight, we had a great discussion with Henry and with Chris and with Laura last week sometime, a telephone discussion. And Rancho Cordova is really very disappointed with the study because it doesn't work for us. The isochrones theory only works. You can only ask your question, where could I get to in a given amount of time from where I am, if you actually have bus routes to ride. And the couple of bus routes that we are left with really don't take anybody from where they are to where they might want to go. There are 65,000 jobs in Rancho Cordova. And it's pretty obvious that we have a two-way commute around here, both in the morning and the afternoon, because people are coming in their automobiles. And they're coming on Highway 50, but they're also coming through the middle of town. And one of the ways that you demonstrate that is the fact that when SACOG was studying the connector 10 years ago, they actually had a senior staff person who felt that the connector, instead of being an improvement to Cameron and Grant Line and White Rock, that it should be improvements to all of the crosstown streets in the south, basically what was then the rural South County, on Florin and Gerber and Vineyard and Excelsior and those streets, as opposed to just putting all your eggs in one basket of a long thing that sort of looked like a beltway, but it wasn't ever going to be. When you studied your 20 proximity to coverage points, 19 of them are in the rest of the county. One of them is in Rancho Cordova, and it's not actually an intersection. You called it White Rock and International. Those are two parallel roads. Sacramento County, the service area for regional transit, is the hallmark of it is what Joel Garreau years ago called edge cities. Yes, you have downtown Sacramento, but then you have the Rancho Cordova and Folsom area, you have Elk Grove, you have Citrus Heights to a certain extent, and then you have Roseville and the South Placer County area. And the Roseville, South Placer County area and the Rancho Cordova Folsom area are the two other main job centers in this district, and they're not being served. It's really great that we have light rail. You're absolutely right, and I have always been a supporter of light rail, even when we began to build it. But having two bus lines, yes, they go to the VA hospital, but there was a comment made earlier about considering the destinations. I think that was Jeff's comment. Considering the destinations, it would be without the train, it would be very difficult to get to a lot of the destinations that people normally take the bus to get to in this county. There's a comment in the Citrus Heights staff report about regional transit doing a high-capacity bus corridor study. But that's to come later. One would think that the only way you could determine whether your high-capacity bus corridors are being acknowledged in this kind of study, whether you're looking at the destinations the high coverage, or whether you're looking at the high ridership, would be to include that study in this particular study. Now, Henry promised us that staff would get together with our staff, and we have a meeting coming on. They have a meeting coming up on the 19th of November. But this is really a plan that works for a grid. And we have 2 grids in this county. They have different characteristics. But you have the downtown grid, and then the grid that goes down through Oak Park and Land Park to a certain extent. But then you have the grid in the north area. It's the Arden, El Camino, Marconi, Madison, Howe, Watt, that kind of thing. Okay. And these bus routes, whether it's coverage or ridership, work really well on those grids. But then when you come out to areas that were intentionally designed as a more open suburb where we're all trying to go back and make connections now because there weren't any connections before, if you don't have any bus routes, isochrones don't work. So that's my comment. And like I said, Henry promised that that staff and regional transit staff would work on this, and I appreciate the fact that you have a short timeline and you have a limited budget. But for us, this is basically the same proposal that we talked to James about 3 years ago, and the intent was to divide 4 bus routes into 2 at that point in time, and that's still what we've got. As a matter of fact, the wonderful people who came from the library 18 months ago and asked to have the bus go back down to the library, I think that bus is already gone. You can't go down Folsom Boulevard on a bus. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any of those before we go to public comment? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Russell Rawlings. And did you bring your mother again?
I did.
What did she do to you when you were a child? Yeah.
Good evening, board. Russell Rawlings, Sacramento Transit Riders Union, and this is a challenge, right? It feels a bit like looking at a game, and it's unfortunate and difficult for those of us that use the system day in and day out to see it kind of gamified like this. So I do urge extreme caution in moving forward on these plans. Director Budge definitely brings up some really important challenges. I've been to a couple of county meetings out in Rancho Cordova, and it is always a challenge to be out in that environment, especially from a pedestrian standpoint. There's a lot of ancillary issues being a pedestrian in that area. I really hope that we can modernize our system. I just wonder if one simple, like, do we want more frequency or more coverage? It's a very nuanced conversation. I think that given the fact that we are maintaining our SB1 funds, yay, we can maybe take a bit of a breath and think a little bit more before we do something rash, potentially rash. There are a lot of things, right? Like, I think light rail is interesting, but if we abandon the idea of transit centers, I worry that, one, better development can't happen because hopefully we can encourage development at transit centers. And 2, I just worry that we will complicate the system with transfers to the point where people will feel alienated from the system. So those are my major concerns.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. Mike Birnbaum.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Mike Barnbaum, and I am in the stakeholders group. We not only met in April, but we did meet in late September in the early fall. And this is a very intriguing project. There's a lot of give and take based on existing funding. There's a lot of intriguing things to look at with new funding, which we know that If it's a local measure, it needs a 2/3 vote. And the last time, 2 years ago, it came pretty close, but it didn't pass by about 2 or 3%. I think that having a conversation about that, especially targeting first and identifying groups of potential opposition and changing their mind, much like what took place in this room about the streetcar discussion in a board meeting, and at 48 Natoma Street convincing people in the open house on October 30th, it changed people's minds from opposition to being part of the proponents group now for tomorrow's item. So I think similarly that can take shape if it's going to be something toward new funding to do some things beyond what is proposed on the 2 maps. But at the end of the day, what it's going to come down to is what can be reported to the state and the feds. And did ridership increase? Not so much on the focus of rail and to reconfigure rail, but this is a study on reimagining and realigning an entire bus network. And at the end of the day, we have to think, another one rides the bus. Another one rides the bus. Oh, let's go. Riders walking down Sacramento County streets wondering where to go. Connect card and or money out, all aboard, let's all go to the show. Are you ready? Hey, are you ready for this? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Out of nowhere, the vehicle pulls up and stops along the curb of the street. Yeah. Another one rides the bus. Another one rides the bus. And another gets on, and another gets on. Another one rides the bus. Hey, are you going to? Another one rides the bus. How do you think I'm gonna get on when my bus route is long gone? RT took riders for granted for years, leaving many on their own. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Can you stand a wave of heat? Out of nowhere, a vehicle pulls up and stops along the curb of the street. Look out! Another one rides the bus. Another one rides the bus. And another gets on, and another gets on. Another one rides the bus. Hey, where you riding to? Another one rides the bus. Hey, oh, catch it. Ride the bus. Ride the bus, yeah. Hey, another one rides the bus. Another one rides the bus. Ow, another one rides the bus. Hey, hey, another one rides the bus. Hey, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
So that's the marketing piece of it, and we can put it on YouTube, Instagram, TV, and radio.
It was officially longer than the original song. Thank you very much.
Yes, and I did see Bohemian Rhapsody this weekend.
Yeah.
And that was an inspiration.
Let me know if you want recording.
Appreciate it, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We didn't lose by 2 or 3%. We had 65.71.
Yeah.
Which is less than 1%.
Less than 1%. Okay.
We lost by 2,500, so that's probably where you got the number.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Close.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Tartagia. Jeffrey, I will give you an extra minute if you don't sing.
First thing I'm going to say is that Jeff Tartagia, and the second thing I'm going to say is that please read through Benjamin's report, because one of the crucial things is you're going after ridership. And every time RT has cut in any of these plans are cutting bus service. Both of them are. You have lost riders. Right now, for Patrick and Don, know that by June, you're going to know more about 1,000 bus station stops in the county when we finish the report that's going on in the county right now of assessing and evaluating. Two of the things that dealing with your icon right through there is exactly what Linda has brought out, is that so much of Sacramento, you cannot simply do the walking. because there is not pedestrian paths through various areas. One of the examples I will use and offer to you is for, quote, high ridership is the 23 and the 25, because the claim by Walker is making it straight will get you greater ridership. Yet that is the biggest route to show you that it doesn't happen, because your 25 should be far busier with everything that's on it than the 23. And yet it's totally the opposite. I am going for the high coverage area because I believe it provides a better for all 7 days. If you went back to 92, and one of the concerns I have in both for light rail, which is not discussed here, but for bus service, is the headways, the times transitioning over. If congestion is the issue, there needs to be a major redesign and re-emphasis of what are, because you say the transfer points, if you don't go for a high frequency system, but go for a coverage system, how do they translate over? I have pushed repeatedly, for example, with the 62 and the 30, which is in both diagrams through there, and yet the biggest part of that is the timing of the schedule. Most of the time, one is right behind the other. So that means that you have, which could be like the 67 and 68, which you run right here, where you have it every 30 minutes, but you're running it through the downtown area in 15-minute increments because you varied the schedule to do this. So that right here beside it, you come by that there is pretty much every 15 minutes. But one of the other issues I would offer to you is how many of the 15-minute schedules do actually work in 15 minutes? So much of them have problems that they don't work in 15 minutes, even the 30. You need to look at that, and that's not considered anything in the Walker's proposal.
Great. Thank you, Jeffrey. Rick Hodgkins.
All right, Rick Hodgkins. In hearing Michelle talk and hearing other members of the public talk, why don't I just try to break this down bit by bit? RT did not always have light rail. Light rail came in the mid-'80s. Before light rail, we just had buses. And as I told Henry over here, and as I would stress tonight, and I would stress this tomorrow night if I made it back here, that only those buses that feed into light rail stations should have not only high coverage, but high frequency. Not all buses feed into light rail. Second, I would have to agree with Director Budge that Rancho Cordova is getting shortchanged, and I can tell you one example as to why. We used to have a bus route called the 91. They cut it because of the low ridership. And why was it low ridership? And because it stopped running too early in the daytime. That didn't make sense. I think the way to do this would be every city within the county of Sacramento, and I want to remind everybody here that Roseville, which is in South Placer, they have their own transit system. They have Placer County Transit and Roseville Transit. They're not even a part of our district. But other than having buses that feed into light rail run at high coverage and high frequency and as early and as late as light rail does, every city in our county should have a bus go to the nearest light rail station closest to that city. For example, the light rail station closest to the city of Citrus Heights would be Sunrise, not necessarily Watt and I-80, because Sunrise Boulevard actually goes to a light rail station at the corner of Sunrise and Folsom. You have bus stops that are on Sunrise that are south of Trinity River Drive that are just sitting there rotting and vegetating. You have a stop at Sunrise in Coloma that's sitting and vegetating and rotting away. You have bus stops where the 91 used to go. So I think rather than there being trade-offs, I think we need to look at that which buses go to light rail and which buses don't go to light rail. The ones that do go to light rail should have not only high coverage but also high frequency. And the bus that goes to light rail, The buses that come from, like, let's say Citrus Heights should just go to the light rail station that's closest to Citrus Heights, just like the ones in Fair Oaks. I believe the closest one would be Sunrise, and so on. So look, not all buses go to light rail, but the ones that do go to light rail deserve not only higher coverage but higher frequency. The 21 is the best example that I can give. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Sorry. That's fine. Glenda Marsh.
Hello. Hello, Board of Directors. I am here representing 350 Sacramento's transportation team. And I want to first of all say that we really appreciate the public engagement model that Sacramento Regional Transit has done through this process. So we think it really is a good model. And I want to mention that specifically because for those board members who also serve on the STA board, this could be an example of sort of the level of street contact and information gathering that would be really useful for the Sacramento Transportation Authority's process for developing expenditures and whatnot. Some of the things I thought would really make the process here good in our view was that it was transparent. You could see the locations and time and dates of all of the outreach opportunities and input opportunities. So it was structured. You could see it. You could see the material really easily. It covered many parts of the community, and especially in this case, obviously connected with transit users and made a point to find out what those routine users thought. A lot of questions remain about what will happen to gaps and changes, and I think that there's still a lot of pieces that are going on that can be knit together, and we don't know how that's going to look yet. But I think that with more iterative outreach and contact with the public will help regional transit and other planners at the cities and at the city and county understand how they can use the microtransit, the paratransit, city and county infrastructure improvements on roads and sidewalks, how bike share and how electric car share and all of these things that are going on out there, how they're all going to work together in the end to address gaps, but also continue to expand the accessibility to transportation. So we look forward to also, because we're a climate change organization, knowing getting some data or some kind of evaluation for proposed new route networks, how they perform for reducing vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions, as well as the goals that are outlined here for access to jobs and things like that. So we definitely would like to see how different options would perform that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Coco Cocazola.
Good evening, thank you. Coco Cocazella. I've heard a lot of good things tonight. It's a really interesting process and a lot of positive momentum. The point of my discussion this evening is iteration, and I like the word that Russell used about nuances. So that we speak about drafts and final proposals coming. The cadence is pretty quick, and maybe more iterative and slow process probably would yield solutions to some of the issues that occur in the framework that's been proposed by the two draft proposals, which are a good beginning, but they may not be the entire end story. Having said that, I'll put on another hat for a moment and read a statement from Sacramento Transit Advocates and Riders that was put together on sort of on the same theme of focusing on iterative community outreach. We are concerned that the tight timeline for SAC-RT forward may not allow enough time for effective community engagement on the alternatives, the draft network plan, and the final network plan. We would like to see more time so that an iterative process of proposals, community feedback, and improved proposals may take place. If extended timeline requires more funding, then STAR would support SAC-RT in seeking more funding for the planning and community engagement process. Thank you.
Thank you. Jaime Lennis. Please let me know if I got that right.
That is correct.
All right.
Good evening, board members, Director Henry Lee and staff. My name is Jaime Lemos, and I'm a senior manager with the Sac Metro Air Quality Management District. I'm here today on behalf of our agency to express full support for the higher ridership network. As we've heard today, this is a complex issue of lots of positive engagement, and I'm going to add another spin to this. Our agency, of course, focuses on air quality impacts and air emissions. As the agency responsible for air quality and a key climate actor in the region, we are very aware of the urgent need for leadership and coordinated deployment of policies that will generate much needed reductions in air and climate pollution. We enjoy a great working relationship with SAC-RT, and we look forward to a growing collaboration and support of the higher ridership model. Your decision will be critical to our success. District staff has reviewed the alternatives report. We found that the higher ridership network better enables the region to achieve our SB 375 greenhouse gas reduction targets and would reduce criteria pollutants over the current network. In addition, this network would maximize productivity of assets and reduce light-duty vehicle trips. The higher ridership alternative would also create more transit priorities, which could lead to CEQA streamlining for housing projects. As we've heard today, for the higher ridership model to be successful, complete streets must be available in the service areas, since walking distances are likely to increase with fewer but more frequent bus routes. As local jurisdictions update their general plans, the Sac Metro Air District will work with planning and public works departments to ensure appropriate active transportation infrastructure, such as sidewalks, lighting, trees, shade, and cycling infrastructures are installed near transit lines. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jaime. Bruce Griesenbeck.
Good evening, Chair Kennedy and members of the board and members of RT staff. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to comment on this project, but more important, thank you for actually undertaking this project. It's a really exciting project, we think. It's timely, and it has the chance to really influence how RT does business moving forward. We also recognize that it's a tough project and will require all of the people in this room to make some tough decisions over the next few months. And we thank you for just being willing to engage in that. It's not easy. SACOG has been standing with RT in their getting this project launched, helping to identify some of the funding that was needed to complete the funding needed to do it. We're ready and willing to help in any way that we can moving forward from this point on. And we wanted to comment at this point in the process. Our understanding is really you're looking at two alternatives on a spectrum. Neither one is perfect. Each one has significant issues, pros and cons, and that the purpose of where we are now is to get some input on which end of that spectrum you should be starting with in terms of trying to solve those problems and retain as many of the pros and reduce as many of the cons as possible. So in general, SACOG as an agency is focused on transportation planning, long-range transportation planning, and assisting our member agencies in implementing projects to move us toward those long-range goals. Some of the performance outcomes that we really are focusing on in our long-range plan update, which is ongoing now, are reducing vehicle emissions. We're a key partner of the Air District in trying to get lower tailpipe emissions. We also are working to help our region contribute to the state's meeting of climate change goals by reducing greenhouse gas emissions from vehicles. Also, a lot of our members and our board members are very concerned, some of which are around the table today, are very concerned about congestion and the effect that that has on the livability and the competitiveness of our region. And finally, connecting disadvantaged communities to jobs and education opportunities to advance them. All of those goals we feel are improved by focusing on increasing ridership and getting more ridership out of the investment that we're making in transit. So for that spectrum that's in front of us now, we do feel and recommend starting from the ridership end of the spectrum and trying to solve the problems that some of which were pointed out today, but to retain as much of that as possible. We feel that that ridership alternative provides a really great framework to focus on developing more infill and compact development and transit-oriented development over time, which will start a virtuous cycle that generates more ridership. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Bruce. Thanks for being here.
Can we do questions?
Yep.
So thank you. I don't know if, Bruce, thanks for coming tonight. I don't know if this is for our consultant or for Henry, but on the last two speakers, these are really important questions for the region as a whole, around air quality, vehicle miles traveled, all that. How are we trying to quantify that within the decisions that we're going to make? I mean, I know there are issues. Mm-hmm. It's not just about ridership. So how does that discussion, how does that interact with the discussion that we need to have once we get there?
We are not going to provide you with a ridership forecast for the future because forecasts contain lots of assumptions that have to do with culture, and culture changes fast. They also contain economic assumptions. As you know, economic conditions can change fast. What we are going to provide you with is hard data on access. So we know that if you implement that alternative or this alternative, this many people will be able to access jobs within a set amount of time, or here's how much that will change. When agencies do things that increase the number of jobs or activities people can reach in a given amount of time, they see more ridership. The amount of more ridership you would see depends on a whole bunch of factors that change too fast for us to forecast them. Now, I believe that SACOG has modeling resources that they can bring to bear on this, though I certainly won't promise on behalf of SACOG anything. And our team may also internally have some resources they can bring to bear on this as well. You do have to do some forecasting, I know, to set your budgets because you have to forecast fare revenue. So I completely understand that some amount of forecasting has to be done, but we're always careful to talk about what we can be certain of, which is how much of the jobs and the space and the residents in a place can be accessible within a given amount of time, because that won't change in 5 years.
So I understand that, and I understand it's not within the scope of your work. And Bruce, maybe I can ask you. So we are going through a planning process at SACOG right now. We have certain goals that are very tough that we're going to have to meet around air quality and transportation issues. Along the continuum, as we look at it, if we make certain decisions, it will impact potential funding for the region in other ways. Mm-hmm. Is that something that SACOG can work with? Will we know that? So if we're here on the continuum, what's the impact that we're going to have on some of these other things outside of RT? But RT has been a great partner, and this is a regional exercise.
Right. I can say we're on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
RT staff has contacted us to talk about some of those issues, and we're trying to figure out the best way to move forward. We definitely want to take advantage of the planning effort that's underway on the route changes that are in consideration. To the extent that those do provide better productivity of routes and higher ridership. We want to fold as much of that into our long-range planning moving forward. We'll be sharing that back to RT staff for sure. So that dialogue has started, and I think we're on the same page. We just need to figure out how to actually implement it and provide that information in a way that helps RT make the decisions in the here and now.
Okay, so I just want to make sure, Mr. Chair, as we get to that discussion, that there is a place to have that conversation. And I know it's not an exact science, and but we have numbers that we have to hit, and this could help, right? Yep.
And that forecast of the ridership will be a part of the justifications for the proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Kerber.
Good evening, Chair and Board. My name is Sarah Kerber. I'm with the Sacramento Transit Riders Union. I've come here tonight to talk about some concerns that our members have expressed over the past several weeks with regards to the progress of this project. We have been concerned from the very beginning of it about the incorporation of meaningful public engagement throughout this process. We know that 600 people have participated. Our members were concerned because we haven't yet seen that participation be included into any of the information we've been provided. I understand that this may not be the point at which the stakeholder engagement will be incorporated, which leads to another anxiety that our members are having about the timeline of this project. We were provided in the spring with this very vague timeline, and I don't think the public has received any more updated details about when decisions are being made, when information is being presented. It was unclear the purpose of the presentation tonight to a lot of members of the public. It's unclear about what's going to happen in December at the meeting. I see here that a final network plan is going to be presented in March. I'm not sure what that will mean for the board, what decisions you'll be making, if it'll just be the conclusion of this project. So some additional clarification on that for the public I think would be beneficial. Additionally, members have had a lot of anxiety about some of the language used in this project. The proposals or the alternatives I think feel very definitive to members of the public, as it does feel like you are choosing between one of these options, which Michelle expressed is not what they are intending to do. They're intending to provide this as a spectrum or defining our values as a community. But that's not how a lot of people are interpreting it. They're interpreting it as I have to choose coverage or I have to choose frequency, and I don't know if I'm going to get what I want with either plan. So I think maybe some additional focus on language choice would be helpful in moving forward. Additionally, the labeling of the maps has been confusing for people because our understanding is that we've been presented with a choice between ridership or between coverage and frequency, but one of the maps is repeatedly labeled ridership. And as Michelle just expressed, increasing frequency doesn't necessarily mean that ridership will increase. There's a lot of other factors that go into our community that will impact how ridership increases or decreases with the way that we change our routes. So maybe some more thoughtfulness in how we're labeling our maps and the language we're using to communicate with the members of the public as we go forward would be helpful and would put our members' minds at ease. Thank you.
Thank you. Henry, would Laura be the right person for them to have direct contact with? Because those are some legitimate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Easy.
Laura, James, and two James, and then they
Sarah, would you meet with them? And I was going to have them come up, but you ended up listing 7 or 8 things. So if you could do that, that'd be great. All right. Thank you. And that is the last card that I have. Is there any other questions of the board, comments? Next item, please.
Item number 5, the General Manager's Report.
Okay, good evening, Chair Kennedy, members of the board and the public. I'm going to cut my speech from 5 minutes to 2.5 minutes. Okay.
Will you sing?
Yes. So first, I would like to congratulate SACRT board members on the successful last Tuesday's re-election bids. This includes Rancho Cordova Mayor Linda Budge, Elk Grove Council Member Pat Hume, and Central Heights Mayor Stephen Miller. And while our beloved Folsom Council Member and Sac County Board Director Andy Moran is retiring, and I'm excited to share that the city of Folsom re-elected a strong Sac County supporter in Councilwoman Carrie Howard. In addition to these great victories, voters resoundingly rejected the repeal of SB 1, which raises funds for roads and transit. This means that Sac County will continue to see investment from the state, and SB 1 provides approximately $6.5 million in formula funds annually and allows us to compete for abundance of discretionary awards if our economy continues strong. Early this year, thanks to the great teamwork from regional partners, Sac County received $85 million capital grant funding from SB 1 to replace our aging fleet of light rail and double-track the last section of the Gold Line to allow for 15 minutes service frequency. We call this project Sac County's Light Rail Modernization, and it is a $145 million total project. This will address about 30% of our light rail state of good repair needs. So $60 million in matching funds is still needed, which we are working very hard on this currently. We just got some great news from for the source of this matching fund last week from the federal funds that SACOG recommended to distribute through the 6-county region. SACOG has over $132 million that was recommended to fund lots of small and medium-sized projects, but still they have $60 million fund left for the next round, of which we received $10 million to assist with our light rail modernization as local matching fund. That still leaves us with over $50 million, $50 million, that needs to be secured. We're working with our chair, SACOG chair, and both chairs are here, and other stakeholders to look for additional match to ensure we can get this project completed soon. Additionally, we received approximately $3 million from SACOG to support our zero-emission shuttle service from UC Davis campus to the UC Davis Medical Center in Sacramento, of which Electrify America, Inc. is providing over $10 million to us to purchase the vehicles and charging infrastructure. We also received about $2.25 million to help buy zero-emission buses for Frankfurt Airport service, but we still need additional money for these 2 shuttle services between UC Davis to downtown and downtown to airport. We anticipate having approximately 50 zero-emission vehicles in our fleet in the coming 1 to 2 years, which will greatly modernize our system. That concludes my GM report, and if you have any questions, I would love to answer.
Any questions? We do have one card from the public, and that would be Mr. Rick Hodgkins.
Great report and great work to everyone who voted no on Prop 6. That would include myself. That allows us to compete for federal funds. And also having the gas tax in place will allow us to possibly get rid of some of the derogatory and inflammatory language that Sarah talked about on the last item, which would again allow us to put all the light rail routes, the routes that feed into light rail, put them together, and just those routes that feed into light rail should be the ones to have not only high coverage, but also high frequency. And also I can think of some other areas where we might want to double track, particularly on the blue line to go towards Watt and I-80 if we want to extend the blue line past Watt and I-80. And what about the light rail to Sac International? Because right now we do not have any service to Sac International. Only YOLO Bus provides service to Sac International. And I would like to see the light rail possibly go to the airport and perhaps all the lines double track, the way BART does things in the Bay Area, having all the lines interconnect so that the Green Line, for example, can go past 13th Street and become a Gold Line train, or become a Blue Line train and go to CRC or to Elk Grove. So that's all I have to say on the GM's report. I'm very happy with what we're doing, thanks partially to the thanks to the demolition of Prop 6 last week.
All right, thank you very much. Next item.
Item number 6, Sacramento-Placerville Transportation Corridor JPA written summary in your packages. If Director Budge has anything further to add?
I do not.
Any other reports, ideas, or questions from directors?
Does not look like it.
I'll announce the closed session items. A, conference with labor negotiator, employee organization, ASME supervisors unit, and B, public employee performance evaluation, general manager, CEO.
Then we will recess into closed session. Thanks to everybody for being here.
I'm going to skip closed session.
All righty.